Assalamu alaikum and welcome to The Society with Barrister Fatma Shaheen. As we all know, child marriage is truly a global issue that cuts across many countries, it cuts across many ethnicities, and it cuts across many societies. What a lot of people don't know is the fact that Pakistan has not one, in fact, several stringent laws to criminalize and to penalize child marriage per se. What they also don't know is the fact that a new bill is also in the making in this regard. Pakistan particularly has been the 6th country to ratify UNCRC, which is the United Nations Child Rights Convention. What all has the Pakistani government done till date in order to curb child marriage? This and much more we'll be deliberating upon in our today's show, and to do that I have this extremely dynamic panel with me today. Let me introduce you to my today's panel. My first panelist for today's show is Ms. Uzma Kardar, who's an MPA. She's also the chairperson for Standing Committee on Gender Mainstreaming, along with being an educationist. Assalamu alaikum, madam, and welcome to the show.
Ji, walaikum assalam, Fatma.
Alongside her, I have Professor Dr. Shaheena Asif, who is a professor of gynecology and obstetrics at Surgimet Hospital, Lahore. Assalamu alaikum, madam, and welcome to the show.
How are you?
And via Zoom link, we will be joined by Barrister Rehan Seerath, who is a lawyer and who is also a political analyst. Assalamu alaikum, Rehan, and welcome to the show.
Assalamu alaikum, Fatma. Thanks for having me on your show.
Madam, I would like to start the show with you just to get the basics straight. We all know that when we talk about child marriage, it's something which is global, something which I made mention of in my introduction as well. But at the end of the day, whether a child marriage is happening in Africa, whether it's happening in the US, or whether it's happening in a South Asian country, the key factors remain the same. So what are those pressing reasons because of which such marriages actually happen?
Fatma, first of all, I would like to congratulate you because you have touched upon an issue which is of vital importance.
Thank you.
Pakistan is one of the first countries to ratify international conventions on CRC, Child Rights Convention, and CEDAW. CEDAW is a convention against all kinds of discrimination, which are held against women and girls. In fact, we are signatory to the SDGs also, 2030.
2030.
And in our commitment, in the first convention, we were the first country to commit towards ending child marriage.
Exactly.
Now, child marriage, let me just begin. It's a misconception if we say that it is something religious. It is not. Child marriage is not a religious issue. It is predominantly a health issue, and secondly, a cultural and traditional
social issue.
Social issue.
Right, madam.
Now, having said that, it is right now our government is trying our best in Punjab, especially to legislate in which we can protect the
exactly,
rights
madam,
of
and you
girls.
brought in a very exemplary piece of law, this bill, in that regard, to which I'll come. But to start with the basics, what reasons do you attribute? Because I know you're a very strong advocate for women and child rights, and you were the one who actually tabled this bill to combat child
Fatma,
marriage.
the main driver is poverty.
Right.
Poverty, because you see, poverty means that parents feel that they cannot feed their children, and the first to get hit are the girls.
Exactly.
At the primary level, the ratio of education in schools is balanced. There is gender equality. But as soon as they touch the secondary level, you will be amazed that most of the girls are pulled out. And practically every second girl is sitting out of school. Why? Because number one, security reasons. Parents feel that they will not be able to take care of their girls.
And also, madam, there's this mindset, unfortunately, that they think that if they invest in the girl's education, it won't benefit them anyhow, because at the end of the day, the girl has to get married and she'll be moving out. So might as well,
that actually is more true of the middle and upper classes. But
Of course,
for the poor classes, this is the main concern.
that they can't afford to get
And then,
the girl's
we have
education.
resolutions like Vatta Satta and Vani and all these, they actually work against the girl child.
But then the laws are also very good that way, about which we are going to speak. But coming to you, madam, I would want to have your health narrative on this, because I think it's only fair we have, you know, all kinds of narratives on the show. So what trends do you as a senior gynecologist see in, you know, early marriages in Pakistan, in I think in more than your 30 years of experience?
Yes. I think the girl marriages is very common in Pakistan, although it's on the decline.
Right.
And ever since our new government came in, the laws are being implemented better.
Exactly.
The laws have been there all along, but a law is as good as, you know, unless you implement it, it's not that good. So the girls which are getting married earlier, they get into lots of problems. There are enormous problems psychologically as well as physically.
Gynae related,
yes.
exactly. But so, madam, like if you were to make a comparison in the past 2 decades, how much has child marriage substantially decreased? Because I was going through this, a very interesting report of UNICEF which suggested that in Pakistan particularly, marrying a girl child has drastically reduced from 50% to below 30%. So
that
do you agree?
That is true. I agree with that, yes.
Exactly.
It has dropped drastically and for the betterment of the girls. But then on the other hand, when we define a girl child, how do we define her? I divide them in 3 categories. One, those are below 14, those who are between 14 and 16, and those who are still under 18 but above 16.
I think it would be a safe bracket to take 18 for that matter, because you know the provincial laws, they are also very different. It depends where the girl is coming from. So coming to you, Rehan, I would want to have your legal narrative on this. Like Dr. Saiba pointed out that, you know, we have to define who a child is. So what does the law say on this? Who is a child for the purposes of our Pakistani laws?
Fatma, firstly, I would want to congratulate you for bringing up this topic, which is quite bold, but at the same time, which is of really vital importance. And you're doing a great job. Secondly, coming to what you were talking about, you see, the definition of a minor has been touched upon in a number of legislations, like in Majority Act 1975, which actually specifies that anyone not of the age 18 is a minor. Similarly, like this very law actually points out that anyone who is not 18 is a minor. So we have a definition. But when it comes to child marriages, there's a specific law which defines as to what a child is, as to who a child is when it comes to the issue of child marriage. In that sense, Child Marriage Act, Restraint Act 1929 clearly points out that anyone who is not of the age 18, though this has been, you see, changed, like in Sindh, for a female, if she is not more than 16, sorry, in Sindh, if she for both genders, if they're not more than 18, that means they fall in the definition of a child.
So basically what you mean to say is that in Sindh, the minimum age for both the bride and the bridegroom has been set to 18. But what is the position in the other 3 provinces?
Well, in Punjab, in Balochistan, in KPK, it's 16 for the female and 18 for the male. But in Punjab also, in 2019, a bill was tabled in which they were trying to bring it at par with the provisions of the Sindh Act. That is, that they were trying to, they proposed bringing the age for the female to 18 and making it 18 for both the genders, like in Sindh.
Just tell us briefly that what are the penalties there in our laws to punish those who actually make, you know, 2 children marry?
In Sindh, it's actually up to 3 years along with fine, while in Punjab, it's 6 months with a fine of 50,000 rupees. And this applies to the registrar, who is the registrar, the parents, everyone involved in the marriage.
More or less, it's basically jail and a fine. But madam, I think on this your narrative is very important, because you were that parliamentarian who actually tabled this bill in Punjab. So tell us more about this bill. How exactly does this bill aim to eliminate child marriage in Punjab?
Fatma, yes, I tabled it as a private member, but then for quite some time I didn't hear about it. So then all the women parliamentarians, including the opposition, we add up to about 77, we got together and dealt with this issue collectively. In fact, we got endorsement signatures from about 160 MPAs from Punjab Assembly, which means that a large majority was
which is amazing.
Yes, which is actually amazing,
Exactly.
because they all felt that this was detrimental,
And it needed to be
especially
dealt
for
with.
the health of our young
Exactly.
children. And that is when the government owned this bill. And right now this bill is with the local government department, and let us see how
What
it
comes out
progresses,
of it.
because at that particular time things were progressing very fast, but then COVID hit.
No, but madam, I'm sure it'll get through, because like you said, it has a lot of support. But tell us about the provisions of this bill. Like, how is it different from the current laws in Punjab? How is it an improvement rather over the current
See,
laws?
the point is, Fatma, right now the current law says that a girl's age is 16 and a boy's age is 18. But the problem is that how do you confirm whether a girl is 16? She doesn't have an ID card, and what happens is that on the pretext of being 16, a 10-year-old, an 11-year-old,
Exactly.
a 12-year-old girl is married off, and her whole life is destroyed. This is not what Islam teaches us, and you'll be surprised there are about 12 Muslim countries in which this law is prevalent, and not just 12 Muslim countries, our own province of Sindh. And
Exactly.
the Senate has passed, because
Sindh passed this law in 2013. Madam,
Yes.
and also I think the most exemplary thing in this law, according to me as a lawyer at least, I'll take
Yes,
Rehan's-
I was just coming to
Yes,
that.
yes, yes, yes.
It is cognizable,
Exactly.
non-bailable and non-compoundable. And in fact, even the parents are punishable, and the punishment has been raised from 6 months to 3 years,
3 years.
anything between 2 to 3 years.
Exactly.
So it will be a big deterrent. You see, what Islam says is that mentally and physically both a boy and a girl should be mature enough to cater to a family, which is not true.
Exactly.
How can young children...
And it's very good, madam, that you've pointed out boys as well, because usually we take this whole debate in the context of only women for that matter. But Rehan, coming to you, madam has pointed out that, the best thing about this bill probably is the fact that all the offences are now non-compoundable, they are non-bailable, and they are also cognizable. So for a layman, who's watching this show, just tell us that how would that practically impact such, anybody who's committing such an offence?
Well, the thing is that first we need to understand what a compoundable offence is and what a non-compoundable offence is. It's actually like if there's a dispute between the parties and they have a compromise, then the state would still take its own course of action despite the fact that there has been a compromise. So when this happens, it means that the offence is non-compoundable. But the state backs out if there has been, but when the state backs out, as per law, if there has been a compromise, then that means that the offence is compoundable. So by making it non-compoundable, it means that even if the parties try to assert that they were both, that both the parties were, that the parents were, or that the parents of the children were, didn't have any issue with marrying them, and the children also didn't have any issue in getting married, even then the state is going to take its course. It's going to take action against those who are involved.
Exactly. So basically, I think the best thing about this bill is the fact now that, the state has shown that they would be very strict about it, and there are no two ways about it. You can't use the lacunas in the law just to escape and to, escort free. But coming to you, madam, I think in this regard, we need to assess the health risks that are also associated when women get married at an early age. So what are the most pressing health risks that are associated with any girl's health if she gets married at a younger age?
Well, again, coming to the age of the girl is very important.
Right.
The girls who are below 14 will be very severely affected psychologically as well as physically, because physically they are not strong enough to go through marriage as well as childbirth and pregnancy. Those who are between 14 and 16, they are sort of safe, slightly better than those who are between 12 and 14. And then there is the 16 to 18 where a lot of people take advantage of not having the ID cards and getting married earlier. And I used to think that this is happening only in the rural settings where people are uneducated. But these days, well-educated people are also getting their girls married between the ages of 16 and 18.
But madam, you're right. But to that extent, I think again it makes a difference, you know, to what part of the Pakistani society you belong, to what socio-economic status you have, and so many other factors, of which madam rightly made a mention of earlier. But having said that, you know, there's this myth generally, I would want you to address that if you get a girl married off at an early age, there's a higher chance that she'll conceive, you know, quickly, basically, because young age generally is associated with more fertility. So what do you have to say about that?
Basically, no, that is not true. If you're married at 12 to 13, it is not possible that you'll get pregnant that easily. It would be better if you were above the age of 16 or so. But
so your body is also, you know, prepared
to receive
your
hormones are not perfect at the moment, although they are getting there, but they are not well enough to get married, as well as the psychological trauma is immense, and that disturbs their whole life.
Birth to a child.
Exactly.
Yes.
And that is something I think that stays with the woman for quite some time to come.
Actually, a girl leaves her house, she goes to another house where she has no friends, she has no support system, she did not have any say in her marriage, and then she is traumatized physically and psychologically. Then it is a poor house most probably, and in getting married into another set of poverty where there is poverty as well as hostility there.
Exactly.
And then there is the burden of the pregnancy or
so
the
many other
itself.
things combined, basically at the end of the day. But madam, you wanted to say
add
please
some statistics to this. Actually, maternal mortality is the second largest leading cause is child marriage, and 50% of all children that are born to girls underage girls, they die. That's infant mortality.
That is very well documented, and that is of course something which is not specific to Pakistan, since it's a global issue that applies equally. It applies world over. And in that matter, I was saying, in fact, Nigeria, an African country, that is the highest prevalence of child marriages, 76%, which is way more than ours. We also need to coordinate law making with other departments, be it Department of Health, be it Department of, you know, for that matter, Nutrition, be it Department of Justice, and so many other things, because at the end of the day, it is a very interlinked socio-economic issue.
Coordination is essential. You know, Fatma, there is in a country where 50% of the population is female, if they do not, you know, contribute to the GDP, the economic implications are going to be a disaster, which means, you know, there was a World Bank report in 2019, and they said that if these girls are facilitated and they are financially included, we can add $6,000 million, you know, to our economic growth.
Of course.
So that's amazing. But then the education sector is very important. You see, we must provide, we must incentivize parents to send their young girls, teenage girls to school. And for this, our government has really done a lot of work.
Exactly. I remember that law that was passed in 2014, madam, which makes it compulsory. Parents are supposed to be punished under the law if they don't send their children to school. But this again is something which...
But that's the primary level, you see. I'm talking about the second. Primary level is fine. It's a secondary level.
That is exactly.
What we've done now is that we've added about 800 plus second shift schools, and those are for such girls because they don't just want to you know, sort of resume their education. They want earning skills also. So we teach them skills so that they can generate money, plus they can finish their education and they can sustain themselves.
Exactly.
So this is very important. Once they get educated, automatically, you know, child marriages will go down.
Rehan, coming to you, we've discussed the laws at length, but practically when we talk about these laws being implemented, what would your, you know, general narrative be? Because we have had quite a few interesting judgments from higher courts where we have seen them take a very strong stance against child marriages.
You see, there was a case, Bakshi versus Bashir Ahmed, in Supreme Court, and it was held that in that case, a 15-year-old girl entered into a nikah nama, And the girl's mother filed a complaint accusing her husband of kidnapping the daughter and getting her married to someone like this. So the court made sure that the daughter is later on handed over to the mother and the stepfather. So this was a case which I remember. Similarly, there have been many other cases in which the courts have taken a strong, courts have taken a strict approach.
We've also had very important judgments from superior courts in which they've, if the girl wants to go along with her husband of her free will, they have allowed her to do that. So I think the law is very all-encompassing in this way, and especially in the way it has been interpreted.
You see, the judgments have to be a bit more in accordance with the way the justice is, the way people want the justice to be seen to have been done.
Madam, would you like to add something to that?
Fatma, this is a very sensitive issue, and no one in their right mind would like to break families or marriages. So the important thing is to prevent this from happening before it takes place, and for that in the bill it is the nikah, the one who performs this. There are some countries like in Malaysia, they have to inform beforehand that this is what we are going to do.
Exactly.
And in Bangladesh, I spoke to Qibla Ayaz, and he spoke about some exceptions, that if the girl is, she doesn't have anybody to look after her, then what happens. So in Bangladesh, in their law, they have made provisions for exceptions. So I think we can also do that.
Do the same,
because, laws are made for society.
Exactly.
And whatever is happening, we have to see how best it suits. But the majority, they are being compelled into this, and their health is at stake, and it is very difficult.
Of course, as they say, prevention is always better than cure that way. But madam, this bill which was moved by this MMA MP in Sindh Assembly only last week, which proposed that it was mandatory for parents to get their children married by the age of 18. If not, then they would have to give explanations. What would be your 2 cents on this?
That was quite a joke, if you ask me. Maybe somebody, who just wanted to take on the existing legislation in the Sindh government. I think it holds no ground.
It holds no ground, and also
I personally feel that even a boy has to be mature
enough to marry. Exactly.
I mean, is it so easy?
And also, what about the socio-economic status? How can one expect that the age of 18 they will both be in a position to support each other as a couple? Again, there will be a burden
nowadays,
on the couple.
My own children nowadays, you finish your education because you're specializing. You're at least 23, 24, 25. Just when
Doc Saiba would know, because I know doctors have this long, they have probably the longest education. Your MBBS takes 5 years.
And then the post-graduation.
The post-graduation.
And then last but not least, our population is going to double in 2035. And this is directly linked to that. Can you imagine?
Of course.
How things can get more complicated for us.
Yes, madam, coming to you, I would want you to tell us, that we've spoken about generally the health risks that early marriages have for women per se, but how do these risks translate onto the health of the child?
You see, if a girl is not well herself, she's very young, she's nutritionally not that good, she's anemic, and she's of small build. If she gets pregnant, she's going to end up having abortions. She's going to end up having a preterm birth. A preterm birth will lead on to perinatal mortality, as well as maternal mortality is higher when the girls are younger. And if the child is born alive, it will die within the next 2 years, because she has to breastfeed, she has to look after the child is born into poverty, and not only this child, but the next child as well, because the family planning will not be that good in such a person.
Exactly. And madam, in addition to that, I was reading this report which said that in Africa, if a girl gets married before 18 and she conceives, and the child itself can have severe stunted growth and development problems, and so many others for that matter.
45% stunted growth in our country. Why do you think
exactly
we have that?
That too, and
our
also
Prime Minister keeps talking about these stunted children, and that shows how concerned he is about our population. If you look at the population and you think how good they are, you have to see how they treat their women the children, and they're old.
Of course, the vulnerable segments of the society.
We are so concerned about our women and about the children, and if they get married earlier, if they have children, then they will not have the proper spacing, they'll have another child and more poverty and more nutritional problems, and this becomes
a vicious cycle, madam. I think one thing adds to the other, and it's something which can't be seen in isolation. Barrister, but coming to you, I would like you to draw attention on the fact that, a very important issue that usually arises in courts is the fact that, whether the person in question, whether the young person, or for that matter, the major in question has consented to the marriage or not. And a lot of times we see that this is something which can possibly be contentious. So how does the law differentiate between those marriages which are self-arranged, in which the parties have consented to the wedlock, and in those marriages where they have not?
See, there is no such distinction in law. I mean, the law clearly provides that if the law prohibits something, then it's regardless of the fact whether the consent was involved or not, it's a crime. Like if they say that anyone who is if the children are below the age of 18, that means they can't get married. They are not allowed.
So even if somebody below the age of 18 wants to get married out of their choice, that is not allowed in our laws. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. And if anyone wants to raise this issue or file a complaint, he can go to the chairman of the union council of that area, and that chairman can then get in touch with the court, and the court can either issue an injunction restraining the parties to enter into such a marriage, or if the marriage is in the progress, the court can even the court has power to actually take an action, take cognizance, and try the parties as per law.
So I think the line is then very, very thin, because at one point you can say that at the age of 17, even if you have your consent, you can't get married to somebody you like, but the moment you turn 18 on your 18th birthday, you probably can. Madam, what would you want to add to that?
I feel that all girls, and for that matter all boys, they all have dreams. They dream big. They dream of doing something, of achieving something in life. But if so much responsibility falls on their shoulders at such a young age, I don't think they can follow those dreams. So I think it applies equally to both genders.
Exactly.
They should be, and in this world of today of specialization, of digitalization, you need to move on. And marriage it's okay, but not when it has health repercussions, economic repercussions, social repercussions,
so many other security and safety repercussions.
Let me tell you one last point.
Yes, please.
A group of girls came to me. They were from different schools, and they had started a petition online. 20,000 girls had signed on it that please we want some kind of legislation to protect us from child marriage.
Exactly.
Because we have no say in front of our parents, and
I
all
think
our
you become
dreams
that
get
voice
crushed.
for all those young women out
all
there, basically.
for all those young girls who want to do something in life, but they are unable to.
But madam, then there is a rare minority about which I mentioned, and I think Dr. Sahiba would further, she could perhaps add to that, since she sees so many young women every day who want to get married because they want to get out of their house. They have a lot of family problems. They maybe don't want to study or pursue a career. So we have, I think, all kinds of girls around, and of course the majority I would want to think falls into the category which contacted you. But then there's a rare minority like the one I mentioned as well.
There are families who want their girls to get married between 17, 18 or 19.
And
all
girls
teenage,
themselves also, they want to get married because they don't want to study.
They are having their hormones,
they don't want to study and they don't want to pursue their careers.
They want to get rid of that, but then they regret it and then they come back to their studies. But basically, we are concerned about our rural settings, where the girls don't have a lot of say in what is happening to them, where the girls don't go to school that often, where the girls are kept in their houses. When these are the girls we are worried about.
We need to address, exactly.
We need to get the local people on board.
I was about to come to
elders of those places, the religious leaders of those places,
Very
and the
important,
doctors.
very
Doctors and
because
doctors like yourself, madam, because I think you are in that position of power where a lot of people come to you. Like if I was to go to my gynecologist, maybe I would discuss the issues I might not with my mother. So I think you people also look up to doctors like yourself. So there's a very important responsibility resting on your shoulders as well. So how can doctors like yourself empower women in turn?
I would love to do it, but the trouble is people like me are sitting in big cities. We are talking about the 80% of our girls who are in rural settings, in far flung areas. There the doctors, probably their mothers have never seen a doctor as well. So,
So how can their access to medical health care that be improved?
our governments have been trying over the years, and more so now, that we reach out to them. The health visitors visit them for vaccinations, for antenatal care, for things like that. But then this is like scattered at the
Of
moment,
course.
and
I
it's
think
getting more organized day by day.
Day by day. Rehan, I would want your narrative on this, since it's such an interesting discussion. We are talking about the role of the government. We are also talking about the role of different stakeholders, be it the religious parties, be it doctors like Dr. Saiba, who we have on the panel today. So what role can possibly lawyers like ourselves play in eliminating this practice of child marriage?
Well, the lawyers can, lawyers alone won't be able to do much. But we can enter. We can have some workshops. We can, but we'll have to do it in, in collaboration with the government or with some NGO, because we can't just, start spreading awareness at our own. That's not our job. But we can, in collaboration with any such entity, we can try to educate people. We can tell them that this is what the law is. We can tell people, we can educate the children that this is your right. And if you are forced or harassed, or if you are made to enter into any such child marriage, then you have the right to file a complaint. And
you have the right to say no. And I think a very important responsibility on lawyers these days is also to do, take up cases of such children, because maybe a lot of them can't afford to get legal help otherwise. So I think a very important responsibility lies on us as well to help these people out, that too pro bono. But madam, one very relevant point that Rehan has raised is of education. And of course, we all know that you're an educationist yourself. So what changes do we need to make in our education system per se in order to actually tell everybody that, child marriage is a big no-no?
Fatma, it is the prime responsibility of the state to provide education to each and every citizen of Pakistan. But unfortunately, since the very beginning, if you look at our budget, we hardly allocate 1 or 2% to education. So I think if we want Pakistan to progress, then we have to ensure that all genders get education. They are economically empowered, so that they can contribute to the growth of the country. And if 50% of our population is hindered from reaching that particular point, then it is a sad story for all of us.
And education also, madam, when we talk about education, just not limited to students, education of parents, education of teachers, and
you see, it is the patriarchal mindset
that needs
to be changed.
Exactly.
Because it's essentially, we are a male dominated society, but we have to bring up the marginalized segments of society, and there the girls are are more deprived, especially at the secondary level. When surprisingly, when you come to the university level, there again you will find gender parity. Because girls who make it to higher education, they are very dedicated and they're very committed, and they outshine.
And I personally feel that exactly they outshine more than their male counterparts. Madam, I think in this, media also has a very important role to play, of course, especially in today's modern age when everybody is connected to the media by the help of their cell phone. So, how can we use media positively to advocate for the cause of child marriage?
The state television has a great role to play on that, because that's the only television which reaches the maximum number of people.
Which is why I wanted to have a show on this very topic today. Exactly.
Yes. So the state media must reach out, and the little advertisements that we show are, I think, of no use. That child should be educated. We should put it into stories.
Right.
We should put it into plays, we should put into films which people will watch with interest and also learn from it.
And also not only that, madam, so much can be done on social media, like all these campaigns, and I think in this different industries can also play a very important part. Like I remember a few years ago when fashion weeks used to happen, there was a few weeks ago when this fashion catwalk happened in Lahore. I remember attending it. There was this very famous designer by the name of Ali Zishan who dedicated his whole line to the cause of child marriages. So I think people from all facets of the Pakistani society, be it people in the fashion industry, be it people, celebrities too for that matter, they can all contribute to this cause. Rehan, one thing I would want you to tell us about is the fact that we have different kinds of laws all over the world, different kinds in South Asian countries, different in Africa, and different in the Western world to actually penalize and to criminalize child marriages. But generically, if you observe, the approaches that have been taken are either, some countries categorically criminalize it, others just merely place a ban, but they recognize the marriage, and then there's this third category which says that such marriages are void. So as a lawyer, when we talk about policy making, what do you feel is the best approach to tackle with the social evil?
What I think is that it differs country to country. Like in Norway has now banned such marriages, but when it comes to Pakistan, I will just talk about that. What I've observed is that unless and until there's a clear criminal sanction provided in law, people are not going to refrain from entering into such a practice.
But the sanction is there, Rehan. We have, jail, a few years jail, and also in this proposed bill by Madam. And then the Pakistan Penal Code was also very clear on that.
Yeah, exactly. It is. And like I said, unless and until, there's a criminal sanction attached to it, I don't think that they're going to resist from or, hesitate in entering into any such practice, because our people, they don't really have any such social pressures when it comes to such things. So if they know that there's, if what they're doing is a crime and they might be put, they might have to go behind the bars, in that situation, they might not practice such, enter into such practices. But if you talk about other countries, like I just said about Norway, similarly, like Sri Lanka, Bhutan, Maldives, you see, child marriages are really very on the lower side in these countries.
Coming to you, Madam, Pakistan has had not one, in fact, it has ratified several international treaties to show its seriousness on curbing this menace. Would you, tell us about these treaties? When did Pakistan sign this? Because like I said in the introduction, Pakistan was the 6th country in the world to sign United Nations CRC, but there have been other treaties as well in this regard.
Yes, the CEDAW treaty, ending all kinds of discrimination against women, that was ratified in 1996. And that was very specific as far as child marriages are concerned. And Pakistan was the first country that said that yes, we will, by 2030, we will get rid of this draconian kind of practice. Actually, child marriage is something which is it relates to about 9 SDGs. Out of 17, it relates to 9, and there are 35 targets that can only be achieved if we are able to reduce child marriages.
Everything is so interlinked that you can't, suppose that you will do one thing and it will have some fruitful results unless you don't change that whole system.
You see, we need all stakeholders on board.
To be on board. I was about to come to that.
All stakeholders.
Religious stakeholders, community leaders,
yes,
parents, teachers.
And we must have vast awareness campaigns, especially in the rural areas.
Exactly, and I think doctors like yourself, Madam.
Once people are aware of what they stand to lose and how it is affecting us socially, economically, in every way, as far as our population is concerned, as far as our infrastructure is concerned, as far as our health issues are concerned, then the mindset will start changing.
Exactly.
And then there will be less resistance people will understand the implications, and therefore in that social media
and I
can
think
play.
in this media is also playing its role, because like I earlier mentioned, I remember this fashion designer who I was very impressed with, because usually they say that, you know, fashion is not for a cause, so it was actually a very pleasant surprise that way. But other than that, celebrities like worldwide,
everybody, I think, should play
exactly
their
they
part.
use their star power to
Yes.
advocate for such causes. But I think
Absolutely.
doctors like yourself have a very important role to play, especially when it comes to policy making.
Yes, I think doctors and religious leaders and teachers and local officers of a particular area should be held responsible for whatever is happening to the women and to the children of that area. And local MPAs should, when they are allocated funds, usually we see these funds are put on roads and bridges and schools and things like that. But then there should be a set amount which should be spent on women and on the girl child especially.
And especially on the girl child,
incentives
madam,
should be given.
incentives should be given,
And
especially in the
door-to-door
rural
campaigns
areas.
are much better, because our media sometimes cannot reach out to the very distant areas of Punjab and Sindh and KPK.
Overall to the remote areas of
Yes,
Pakistan. And I
yes.
think, madam, something you earlier raised during the conversation as well, something I would want to build on now that we are moving towards the conclusion of the show, that how can we basically make women in the rural areas more aware of this, because this is something which is their fundamental right, if you come to think of, because it is not only related to your health, it's related to so many other fundamental rights of yours.
If our men are educated, they would want their women and their girls to be educated. So first of all, we have to concentrate on the men as well as the women, and then we come on to the girl child. So basically, it's a multiple faceted thing. We have to look at many avenues. We have to do brainstorming,
And I think- and for rural
everything
areas-
is not suitable for every place.
Of course, madam.
There may be a tribe where we need to do it differently. It may be a village where things
We
are
will
done
need to have
differently.
door-to-door campaigns.
Yes.
I remember the government was some time back running these very, actively running these advertisements, the purpose of which was to make women aware about their maternal, health and all the complications that were related to pregnancy and all.
Health workers like Dr. Saiba said play
I think they
a
should
very,
also
very
be
important
role. This is why I have her on the panel today.
They go from door to door, and there's a one-to-one interaction between girls and women, and they can sort of spread the awareness. By the way, our government has done a lot to incentivize
Really?
girls' education. They all in rural areas, especially in remote areas, they give 1,000 rupees per girl child, if the parents send them to school.
Awareness at the end of the day, I think that's the key, whichever form it is coming from, whether it's coming from politicians like yourself who are, working diligently to curb this menace, or from doctors like yourself. And Rehan, to basically come towards the conclusion of the show, what would your advice be, that since this is just not an issue which is limited to Pakistan, it's a global issue, how can we all come together to fight child marriage at an international level?
Well, what I believe is that you see, passing the laws or enacting laws, or that isn't sufficient. We need to, implementation is also important, but what actually matters is that every person should know about his or her rights. If a girl knows about her right, if she knows that she can't be forced into any child marriage by any such marriage by her parents or anyone, then only she can raise this issue, or she can file a complaint, or she can, raise the issue. So we need to have, like they were saying, we need to have more awareness campaigns. We can have them through various mediums like advertisements, like dramas, like movies. But what actually matters is that we need to educate our people about the rights which they have, and that this very thing, a child marriage, is a crime which they cannot be forced into. So what I believe is that it's not only, this issue cannot just be covered by having laws or by implementing them, but another thing which is very important is for the people to know that such a crime actually exists, and if they are doing any such thing or forcing any child to get into any such marriage, that is a crime.
Exactly, Rehan, and there have been cases in that regard where children themselves have called up the police and police has come to their rescue when they've complained that, you know, their parents are forcibly getting them married. So awareness to a great part is the key, but awareness not only of children but of parents, of teachers, of the entire community in that regard is very important. What would your concluding message be in this regard, madam?
This is an age of smart power and not muscle power. So we have to empower our boys and girls equally. There should be no gender discrimination. There has to be a balance and equality for everybody, equal opportunity for all, leaving no one behind, and for that child marriage really comes in the way.
Right. And what would your concluding message be, madam?
My message would be to all my doctors, my lawyers, my teachers, my religious leaders, all the fathers and brothers and the mothers who are listening to this, that even if you can save one girl from being married as a child, you would be doing a great service to the society. So keep your eyes and ears open, look around, see which girl is in trouble, try to help and try to get the laws implemented, and please report if something is wrong.
Thank you so much, madam. Thank you so much, Dr. Sahiba, and thank you so much, Barrister Saab, for being here with us today. Well, to conclude today's show, the only thing that I would want to reiterate in my conclusion is the fact that the Pakistani government is doing its bit in order to curb this social menace of child marriage, be it in the form of passing progressive laws or, for that matter, ratifying international treaties. What needs to be done at a very basic level is the fact that we need to create maximum public awareness about this social evil. We need to make people understand that they need to say no to child marriages, because that is not only the right thing to do, that is the smart thing to do. On that note, signing off for today. Until next time, take care and Allah Hafiz.